So my name is Teresa DuPratt. I'm here from Counseling Services. We have these cat chats every week on Tuesday from 4 to 5 with all kinds of different topics. And if you have missed any of them, you can find them on Counseling Services website. Just to have an overview of what I'm going to go over today, we're going to talk a little bit about some facts and statistics about alcohol drinking in college students. We're also going to talk about alcohol and its effects on your body. Alcohol in Greek life, which is a unique intersectionality. We're going to talk a little bit about values, because I think when it comes to drinking and making decisions, our values can really come into play to make decisions. And then finally, I'm going to talk about staying safe and talk a little bit about K-State's Lifeline 911 that not all students know about, but is a very important resource. So first of all, some facts. Harmful and underage college drinking have been shown to be significant health problems. And they take enormous toll on the intellectual capacities of students. It affects grades, it affects health, and college or students' social lives as well. And many college alcohol problems are related to binge drinking, which, Taylor, can you tell me what binge drinking is?
A lot?
Yeah,
in one time setting?
Yeah, exactly. That's really close. The consumption of an excess amount of alcohol in a short amount of time. So exactly what you said, pretty much. And the NIAAA, which is the National Association for Alcohol, defines binge drinking as a pattern of drinking that brings your BAC, or blood alcohol content, up to 0.08. And this typically occurs after 4 drinks for women and 5 drinks for men in about 2 hours. I actually think it's maybe 3 to 4 drinks for women, depending on how big somebody is. Makes a big difference. So, yeah, binge drinking is not safe. Okay. Some more facts about alcohol is that alcohol is actually made from ethanol, and ethanol is really the intoxicating agent that's found in beer, wine, and liquor. We know a lot about it here in Kansas because alcohol is produced by the fermentation of yeast, sugars, and starches. They use grains and barley for that, and so Kansas is known for being a contributor to the alcohol formation process. Often fruits such as grapes and grains, and then grains like barley and wheat are most commonly used to make wine and beer and liquors. Sometimes other sweeteners such as cactus or sugarcane are also added to try to make it easier to drink for people, because as you probably know, alcohol on its own tastes really terrible. It tastes like poison. He's holding in his hand right there a vat of ethanol, and so it's the same thing. We get it from corn, which is another reason why corn is big all over the U.S., especially in Kansas. And then that ethanol is what he has in that beaker right there, and it is a colorless liquid, and it has a slight characteristic odor of alcohol. And it's the same things that they add. It's the same substance that they add to gasoline as well, and so that's a little scary, knowing that college students are going around drinking the same thing that we put in our cars to make them run. It's a poison. A lot of college students get confused about what is a standard drink, because that's a word that's thrown around a lot, and then liquor stores will sell giant like limeritas that have actually like 3 drinks inside, or solo cups are a popular thing on many campuses, and a solo cup typically holds about 1.5 to 2 drinks per solo cup, and so people are drinking probably more than they actually realize. I'll talk about this again in a little bit, but 12 ounces of a 12-ounce beer, a regular, what you think of as a beer, has the same amount of alcohol as 5 ounces of wine, is about 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits at 40% alcohol. So even though those liquid volumes are different, it's all around the same amount of alcohol. A typical solo cup, like I said, though, has at least 1.5 drinks in there, depending on what's in it. If it's a strong punch with a lot of hard alcohol, then it's going to be even stronger than that, maybe up to even 3 drinks worth of alcohol, depending. So it's really important to know what you're drinking. A lot of times there'll be just the big punch bowl sitting there. You don't know how much alcohol is in there, so really important to ask whoever made that what kind of alcohol is in there and how much of it. We're looking that college students don't become a statistics because there's lots of consequences to college drinking. For example, this was done, I believe, in 2015, this reflects. And so there were over 1,800 deaths related to college drinking, 400,000 unsafe sexual encounters. So that's that includes sexual assaults as well as like one-night stands or hookups, which is the big in college culture right now. Almost 600,000 injuries. So this can be anything from like stumbling and hitting your head. I was looking a little bit at what these statistics reflected. And so it can be anywhere from tripping over something and hurting yourself to actually being killed in a drunk driving accident. And so 600,000 is a lot of people. 700,000 assaults related to alcohol. This can be like just violent assaults. It can be sexual assaults. Then there's also been 97,000 sexual abuse incidents across the country just in 2015 alone. And those are the ones that are reported. And from the research, we know that not all sexual assaults are even reported. So that number is probably much higher than that. In addition, 4.86 million drunk driving incidents have happened because of drinking. And so that can be someone's drinking, and it can be either someone drinking and driving in the car, or it can be someone who is drunk and has walking along the street. They gave an example of someone getting hit by a car because they weren't paying attention when they walked in the street. So we don't want any of our college students here at K-State to become a statistic, so it's important to know all of the dangers that can happen around college drinking. Next, I'm going to go on to alcohol in your body. This little thing up here is in the way for us, but if you can see right there, this liver right here is a picture of a healthy liver, and this picture over here is a liver that has cirrhosis, and so it's kind of gross. This is over probably like 30 years worth of drinking, but even so, like why even start that process? Because alcohol is metabolized primarily by the liver, and so if there's any organ that's going to be affected, it's going to be the liver first of all. There's some like chemical reactions that take place in our bodies. I'm not going to give you all of that. It's a little heavy, but basically we excrete small amounts of alcohol not only through our liver, but then it comes through our urine, our lungs, breath, and sweat. And with that excess alcohol coming through our breath, what do we use that for? Does anything come to mind when we think about that? Mm-hmm.
Comes to mind when I think about
the fact that alcohol comes through our sweat glands, it comes through our lungs.
That's pretty gross.
It is gross. And you know, it's also can get us in trouble because our breath is what the police measure when they pull somebody over and think that they're drunk driving. And so that's where they're able to get the percentage of alcohol in your blood just by taking a recording of your breath. So, alcohol also elevates the inhibitory transmitter GABA, and it reduces nerve signals. So that's why alcohol is known as a central nervous system depressant. Some people, when they drink alcohol, get happier and they seem to get more energy, but it actually is a nervous system depressant rather than a stimulant. It lowers both our cognitive and physical abilities. Some areas of your body that alcohol also affects: your brain. Of course, it leads to loss of coordination, poor judgment. It can lead to slow reflexes, distorted vision, loss of memory. And you may know of some people, have you ever had a friend have a blackout where they pass out or don't remember something the next day? Mm-hmm. And so that's not good. Drinking alcohol also affects our heart. It can cause your blood pressure to rise, increase heart rate. It can cause arrhythmia, or an abnormal beating of your heart. It can also increase the size of your heart over time. So people who have died of alcoholism, if they've looked at their hearts, they're much bigger than a regular sized heart. So damage has been done there. In your stomach, it starts off on this picture saying you're putting empty calories into your body. I feel like that's probably the least amount of our worries, the number of calories. It's really the poison of alcohol. Alcohol is toxic and it's a poison to our body, and so it can cause stomach problems and ulcers, and even contributes to a lot of different types of cancer. Again, the liver can cause cirrhosis or hepatitis. And usually our liver is really beneficial to us, cleaning out poisons from the things we drink, but when we give our body alcohol, the liver has to work overtime and just take tons of poisons out of our body, and it works really hard, and so it gets worn out faster depending on how much alcohol you drink in your life. And then finally, your reproductive system even. People don't think about that, but that alcohol can really affect your reproductive system as well. For women, it can cause painful periods, a heavier flow of your period, a worse PMS, and we don't need that, right? PMS is not good already. And so also drinking raises the risk of getting sexually assaulted and having unintended sex with people. So really important to be aware of and remember that when you're drinking, it doesn't just affect that night in your mind, but it stays in your body and affects your body over time. Alcohol misuse over time is associated with liver and cardiovascular disease, cancer, and nervous system damage. And then this part is really salient to me, is that alcohol may also contribute to mental and emotional problems such as depression, anxiety, and even antisocial personality disorder. And if someone is already depressed and anxious, alcohol is not going to be helpful, and yet that's often a substance that people turn to kind of cover their feelings and not deal with their feelings. And so one thing can lead to another, and then it turns into a vicious cycle. I found this interesting picture. I thought it was pretty telling. The brain on the left is of a normal 43-year-old, and I don't know what they mean by normal, except for that I'm guessing they didn't drink as much as an alcoholic does. So by normal, I'm guessing they mean maybe periodic drinking to no drinking. And then the other brain is a brain of an alcoholic 43-year-old, and you can see how the brain is just kind of shrunk, and there's lots of extra space, and obviously that brain is not working as well as the other one. It's kind of scary. And that's only like 20 years in after college, so it's not even like the person is 70 or something like that. In doing research for this presentation, I found out that alcohol in Greek life is very significant in colleges. And so above the regular student population, alcohol and Greeks actually have a difficult relationship with alcohol. And so I've found some frightening facts about sororities, fraternities, and alcohol that I'd like to share with you. For example, sorority girls are more likely to have body image issues and dysfunctional eating behaviors than their peers, probably due to having a lot of peer pressure. Everyone's in the same house, everyone's trying to influence each other, and alcorexia is not okay. Can you tell me if you've ever heard that term before? Okay, and so that's a term I actually heard from a student on campus. And so alcorexia is when people kind of save their calories in order to be able to make room for drinking calories. The only problem with that is that you're not getting any nutrition out of the drinking calories, it just is poison. And so it's not okay to be doing that. It's much better to have all the nutrition that you need and the food that you need if you're going to be drinking anyway. Individuals who are members of sororities and fraternities are more likely to abuse alcohol and more likely to binge drink. Fraternity men have a higher risk for committing sexual assault as well. Important to know that. Not that every man in a fraternity is going to do that, but just the likelihood might be higher, and they may not even mean it, but the alcohol playing a role, they might feel a little pushy that day, and so that might turn into a sexual assault. The fraternity or sorority house is the largest on-campus venue for drinking, even more than campus bars and things like that. Always house parties are really the biggest place where people are getting their alcohol. Important to know that. So just because the police are out and about in Aggieville doesn't mean they're even getting to where all the most important drinking is, or the most drinking is taking place. Sorority members are more likely to be victims of sexual assault, so always, be traveling in twos and things like that just to make sure that you stay safe. More students engage in heavy drinking at fraternity and sorority parties than at off-campus parties and bars. And then members suffer more alcohol-related consequences than their peers. And this has been shown to be physical consequences, grade consequences, legal consequences, and so it's just kind of not good across the board. Here are some telling facts by the numbers, factors that affect students' individual academic performance. If you can look at the bars there, you can see that the general student population is in green, and then the Greek student population is in blue. And if you notice, almost always that blue line is higher than the green one, which means that if you're part of a Greek organization, you're more likely to have anxiety, more likely to use alcohol, more likely to be depressed, and just, so if you yourself or if someone you know is part of Greek life, it's going to be even more important that we talk to our friends about being safe with drinking. Sexual assault, sleep difficulties, these all show discrepancies between the regular student population and Greek life. So that's an important thing to maybe write in your article. Let's see. Okay, so when we're deciding whether or not to be drinking, I think that when we make any decision in life, it's really important to reflect on our values. And what does values mean to you? What are values? When I say that word, what does that mean to you?
That's like what you hold close to you.
Yeah, that's a really good description. Thank you. And it's really what is deciding what's most important to you in your life. It's exactly what you want to bring close to you and hold dear. Values are great cohesive forces for our overall identities, and they can be thought of as decision-making guidelines that help us connect to our true selves. And I didn't make this definition up. I found it and emphasized it, but I think it's such a good definition in that I'm going to say it again. So values are great cohesive forces for our identities. So when we're trying to figure out who we are, and all of you as college students just trying to figure out who you are at this important time of your life, what kind of an adult you're going to be, reflect on your values and what is important to you. And especially when you need to be making a decision, it's really important to be aware of what your values are, because like this quote says by Roy Disney, it's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are, because you have something to live by then, something to guide you along the way. Identifying and understanding your values can be challenging, but it's such an important exercise. Your personal values are a really important part of who you are, because it shares with yourself in the world who you are, how you're going to live as an adult, how you're going to interact with the world and the people around you. And by becoming really aware of your values, you can use them to make choices in your life. And there'll always be more choices to make as you grow older. More choices all the time. So on that note, there's just a very short little video about values.
Your values are the standards of behaviour and ways of doing things that you think are correct in the way you live and work. When your actions and decisions align with your values, then you show others that you have integrity. You become a good role model, and you experience peace of mind because you're confident you're doing the right thing. When you act in a way that goes against your values, you can feel unhappy and bad about yourself. You can make mistakes, and you may find yourself behaving unethically. You'll have noticed different people have different values, and these often determine the things they do in life. For example, a life-saving surgeon will have different values from a respected musician, who will have different values from an award-winning designer. So do you know what your values are? To identify them, start by thinking of times when you were happiest. What were you doing? Why were you so happy? Next, remember times when you were really proud of yourself. Why did you feel proud? Then think about times when you felt really fulfilled and satisfied with what you were doing. What need or desire did you meet in these situations? Once you've thought about why these situations are so memorable, make a list of the values that led to these outcomes. These can be values like honesty, openness, success, creativity, or self-reliance. Or they could be any of hundreds of other equally worthwhile values. You might end up with a long list, and that's fine, but you need to focus on the values that best define you. So your next step is to prioritize these values and identify the 4 or 5 you think are most important to you. This can be a challenging step, so give yourself some time to really think about which of these are most meaningful. By doing this, you'll take an important step towards living a happier, more authentic, and less stressed life.
And so, on that note, this is actually a partner activity that I did with my last group, but there's not a lot of people here to be partners with. Maybe you two could be partners. And so what I've just been asking people to do with this is to consider what I'd really like you to do is look at the back. On the back is a list of lots of values that may define you. What I'd like you to do is think about, you can, instead of doing each one of these, since there's just the two of you, either do one of the three steps, each of you. Either identify a time when you felt the happiest, identify a time when you were most proud, or a time when you were most fulfilled and satisfied. And think about what values were at play for you then. And just take a minute to consider that, talk about it with each other. And then on the back, I'd like you to circle like at least 5 values that you think best describe who you are and what you believe. And it looks like you all just started by circling on the back, and that's fine. We can just talk about what those values might be. Okay. So I'm most curious about you defining your values in general, and then I'd be curious which values that you defined would help you make a decision when it comes to drinking alcohol. Would you mind sharing some of your values, Taylor?
We make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things that I circled is faith.
Mm-hmm.
My relationship with Jesus is what helps me figure out what decisions to make. Also, I also circled family oriented. I think about what my family would think if I did this or something. And I'm the oldest.
So you're an example as well.
I am.
Okay.
I'm the role model.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and I really take that seriously.
Good, yeah, that's great. Do you have any Wendy values?
Mine were, for this specific scenario, out of the ones that I checked off, because I was looking at one of these things on the front about what the time you were most proud and what values were in play then. And I would say out of the 5 that I have right now, I would say accountability
Yeah.
and intellectual status.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these values that we hold really can help define where we're going and how to make decisions. Some of the values that I circled that could be related to alcohol decisions include like balance. If you want to maintain your balance, so you don't want to be drinking. Clear-mindedness, like I really value being of a clear mind, and so if I were to be drinking, like that's something that goes away when you're drinking, and so being on top of things is really important. Faith, I also had circled, depending on which faith you are, would maybe play a big role in whether or not you drink. Also family-oriented. Grace, it's hard to do things with grace when you've been drinking, and so that's probably a value that you could hold on to and decide not to drink. Preparedness, so if you need to go to class tomorrow morning, if you have exams due, if you have papers due, you don't want to be fuzzy that night or the next day or the days after. That can sometimes happen. And then, of course, if you want to be successful, alcohol doesn't always play a big role in people's lives when they're very successful. And so it's just good to keep this list around so that if you ever have a decision to make, you can really think about what your values are, and it might make it easier for you to make a decision in the future. The next thing I would like to talk about are myths about drinking, and you can tell me what you think. So myth number 1 is I can drink alcohol and still be in control. What do you think of that?
I think that depends on how much you drink.
Ah, okay. At my last presentation, everyone said, yeah, that's true, you can still be in control. But that's what most people think. Actually, it just is alcohol impairs judgment, leading to regretful behavior in circumstances, and that can happen after just a couple of drinks. You're also automatically, as soon as you're drinking on campus, you're automatically putting yourself in a statistical place that makes you a greater risk to have unprotected sex, physical injury, damaged property, mistreatment, missing classes, feeling awful, and even ruined friendships. I've actually already been in contact with some students this semester who have accidentally ruined friendships by going to a party and acting foolish, and now the person doesn't want to be friends with them anymore, and so we can lose friends over it. How about drinking isn't all that dangerous?
Definitely think it can be dangerous. Yeah.
All of the things I just talked about are pretty much risks, so that makes it a little bit dangerous. Poor academic performance over time is probably pretty dangerous for college students because that's what you all are here for, is to get that college degree. Sexual assault, big danger, and something that happens more often in college student populations, especially those that have a Greek life. And then ultimately, and hopefully not, death due to alcohol poisoning, and we'll talk a little bit about that, or due to some kind of an accident or drunk driving, so not good. How about I can sober up quickly if I have to?
Works like that.
Exactly. A human body takes 2 hours to process one drink, and nothing can speed that up. Not eating protein, not drinking coffee or water, not running up and down steps or exercising like an old undergraduate friend of mine thought if he exercised when he was drinking, it would move faster through his body. I don't know. How about beer doesn't have as much alcohol as hard liquor? Some students will drink beer and think, oh, well, it's not vodka. It's a tricky one, right?
I would say truth, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, beer does have as much alcohol as hard liquor. So like we kind of talked about a little bit before, one beer is just like having a shot. So same amount of alcohol is the same as 5 ounces of wine. Oops. Myth number 5, I can drive fine after just a couple of drinks. No. That one is a little bit more obvious, right? Impairment begins sooner than people think. You can get a blood alcohol content of 0.05, which affects memory, speech, coordination, judgment, and all of that, and that can happen just after 1 or 2 drinks in an hour. So people don't realize that they are impaired sooner on. Most of the time people don't realize they're impaired until they're like stumbling. And actually the truth is you're impaired before that, much before that. Some important things to know. So you can see the big exclamation point on here. It's because these are really critical signs. So if you happen to be out and about and you don't even have had to have been drinking that night, but maybe you walk by a frat house and someone is laying on the ground passed out. This is what I'm hoping that people think about. Critical signs of an overdose of alcohol. And so if someone can't be woken up, that's your first sign that maybe they have alcohol poisoning. Mental confusion, so maybe someone's like slurring their words, they don't understand reality, they can't even have a conversation with you. That's somebody that you'd want to keep an eye on because they could pass out and then they could die of alcohol poisoning. Vomiting, a lot of people who drink and overdrink will vomit, but if someone has had so much alcohol that they're having an alcohol overdose, the vomiting, they could actually choke on that if they pass out, so really important to be watching for that. Seizures, too much alcohol can cause seizures in people's brains. Slow breathing, so if you do come across someone that's passed out and you pay attention to their breath for a little bit and they have fewer than 8 breaths per minute, that is a really critical sign that help should probably be called. Irregular breathing, so this irregular breathing, the 10 seconds or more between breaths is a little bit like sleep apnea, and so someone might be breathing and then they stop for a minute and you're like, what happened? And all of a sudden they're like, and so that's another sign of alcohol overdose. Low body temperature, blue skin color, paleness, and so this can often happen in the winter months. This is a horrible story, but I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I live in this little artsy neighborhood, and we had a horrible event happen last winter where a college student left a house party in the middle of the night, and it was one of the nights where there was like a 30 below wind chill, and she didn't know where she was. She hadn't been to the neighborhood before, and so they found her on the morning laying on the sidewalk, frozen to death, passed away, and they had a video camera on a building outside, and it just showed her like walking back and forth and wandering around, like she just did not know what was going on at all. And if just any person would have been around to just stop and say, hey, something's not right here, let me take you somewhere safe, like it would have saved her life. But instead and it was a freezing cold night, so there weren't a lot of people out, but it would have just taken like one person, and I think about her a lot when I think about this. It's really important that we stay safe and watch out for others, even if they're not friends of ours. Just being fellow humans on this earth, really important to watch out for people. Kansas State, and I've heard at the last presentation that I did that this might be going nationwide, and so that would be fantastic. But right now I can only say for sure that it's allowed here at Kansas State. It's called Lifeline 911. And what this is a policy that allows students to seek immediate medical assistance for someone who's having an alcohol-related emergency, either on behalf of themselves or someone they don't know or a friend, and they can do that without getting in trouble themselves or sanctioned for drinking. And the reason we do that is because it's so important that victims of alcohol-related emergencies seek medical attention, that they will waive the consequences for someone else in order to save somebody's life. So just know that if you find someone and you have been drinking, and spread this message around, if you know people who do drink, like if they come across someone who needs medical attention, go ahead and call, because you won't get in trouble, and this is what will save you from that. Some resources, and this PowerPoint will be up on our website so that you can reach these things. On campus, there's counseling services. I always like to plug our counseling department. We're in the English and Counseling Services department. And building, we have walk-in services from 8 to 5 in case of crisis. That's the KSU Police Department number. I believe it's a non-emergency number, but just in case you need some advice or want to know what to do in the case of a friend who's in trouble. And then some resources I found in the community of Manhattan. You can just dial 211 on any phone and get connected to someone who can give you all kinds of resources for food, alcoholism, different kinds of mental health issues, heating assistance, that sort of thing. Pawnee Mental Health Services, really important. They have a lot of different organizations in the area. One of them is specific to alcohol and drug abuse. And then there is a clinic called the Restoration Center, which is also known for helping college students with their alcohol abuse. Some other resources that I thought I'd put in here, since we did talk about the topics briefly or indirectly: National Sexual Assault Hotline, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Crisis Center, and the LGBT Suicide Hotline, or the Trevor Project. So these are just all good resources to have in case someone you know is in trouble with alcohol or otherwise. And that's all I really have for you today. Do you have any questions about alcohol use, alcohol in general, what you can do to help people, anything like that? No? Okay. Do you have any incidents that have happened or that you know of related to alcohol?
Yeah, just recently. I had a friend that was dealing with depression, and she felt that alcohol was helping her deal with the depression, and it definitely wasn't. So it ended not so great, but she's okay now.
Okay, good. Yeah, and you can always direct people to counseling services between 8 and 5, or we even have an after-hours call line if someone finds themselves in crisis, so always an option.